Okay, well, we do have a quorum. So why don't we move ahead with the usual initial item of approval of the minutes of August 23rd, our last meeting.
Would you like me to move the minute, we accept the minutes?
I would definitely like to do that.
All right, I so move.
Okay, do we have a second for that? Thank
I'll
you.
second it if nobody else
Joshua?
will.
No, you can't, Ken, you wrote them.
Oh, that's
You can't
right.
second your own minutes.
I bet you it would be allowed,
Yeah,
though.
sorry, second,
I
I'll
think it-
second it.
There's nothing.
Okay,
that's illegal about it.
Stasha has solved the problem. And do I hear any comments or discussion? Having not heard any,
I think
No,
Sharon,
wait a
you're
second.
muted.
Here I am. Now I hear. Yes, I actually have an addendum. At the very end of the meeting, I leapt in to say that I think it was the first two or the first slide that Valerie had proposed on climate had not come from the climate committee. So I'd like to have that added in there.
Okay.
and with that amendment, can we vote for approval? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Apparently not. Okay, moving on to the main item on the agenda. Valerie, unmute yourself, please. The first public forum, which is near and dear to our hearts and most important at this point. We've had a couple of conversations since the last meeting about this. Valerie has gone through with Brian and the group on what the proposed approach would be, and I think we've made significant progress. So Valerie, with that, if you could share your screen and describe briefly where we are.
Sure. I was not planning to show the presentation, if that's all right. We can put a draft up on Dropbox if that's a good way to go forward. But I think, so Kia, Ken, and Brian put a lot of work into making the slideshow look a lot better, look a lot cleaner, but also in streamlining all of the content. So it is definitely reflecting the comments that we heard back from you all at the last meeting around wanting to make sure that we're having kind of a quicker presentation so that we can focus our time on the interactive stations and, incorporating some more of the feedback that we heard around the existing condition slides. So that team has really been doing a wonderful job of putting it together, and so I'm feeling like we're nearing the finish line, and we can share a draft on Dropbox if that makes sense to the presentation group, and I can, if you have comments, feel free to send them over to me. We can talk more about what comments or suggestions you might have. The same goes for the stations. I don't know how useful it might be to kind of rehash at this point. So Bob, if that's all right.
Stations, Valerie.
Sure. Let me find my list. Annie's testing me. Let me see. All right, so I don't even have them in front of me. I thought they were part of this, but there's
Does
the
Brian have
introduction.
them? Brian, do you have them?
I'm looking to see whether I can pull them up. Just give me a minute, please.
Yeah, I think it's one of the slides towards the end of the presentation has a list of stations. So there's I'll just start while Brian's trying to pull it up. So there's an introduction map where folks can, put their sticker where they're coming from. There's the wish poem. So I wish Bolton had fill in the blank. There's a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis station. And then we have, I just found the list. We have transportation and mobility, economic development, housing, open space and recreation, regional planning, and then the community aspirations. So there are nine stations in total.
And not one on climate issues. She said from her perch in the tree.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to recall how we left this at the last presentation meeting. I thought that we had discussed that we wanted to have the climate slides available for folks to look at more, but that might be a topic for a more in-depth charrette. I see climate change and climate action as a part of every single chapter in the master plan. So I'm hopeful that climate action and thinking about sustainability will be discussed when we talk about housing, economic development, transportation, and all of that. So I'm not, by not having a station dedicated to an interactive element for climate action, I don't mean to say that it's not going to be at the forefront of the master plan, but simply for this one forum, I don't have an interactive station.
Okay. And when you say that it's likely to be part of all the others, but if it's not, if we're letting the people who come there determine what's talked about in all of those, what we will simply find out is whether or not anybody is aware of or is even thinking of climate when they talk about housing. I mean, it's taking what I would consider to be an extraordinarily important topic and hoping that somebody mentions it. But maybe we do that later.
We do
I
have the facilitators or docents at each station that have at some points will have prompted questions to ask the folks who are in front of them. But yeah, Bob, go ahead.
No, I think it would be a good idea. I think Sharon's point is well taken, that and yours as well, Valerie, that it does cross absolutely everything that we're talking about. And maybe an appropriate way to do this in order to incorporate that is for Sharon and company to put together appropriate talking points for each of the others, so that each of the people at the various stations can bring up the climate change element that is appropriate for their particular topic. But I think that would be an appropriate way to deal with it and to get feedback. So it does two things. First of all, it gets people talking about climate change in a broad perspective, and by implication, understanding how important it is to each of the elements of the master plan and our thinking. And secondly, start getting feedback about how it applies to each individual element, so that we can use that as a mechanism in subsequent surveys and forums to have that conversation. So I think, and Sharon, if you can put together thoughtful questions, topics about how climate change applies to each one of the other stations, I think that would be very important. And let's get those out relatively quickly, and let's have that conversation with the people who will man those individual stations.
So are we going to have a listing of those stations? Because I did not write them down quickly as you were speaking.
No, and Valerie, you'll include that, obviously, I hope, in what you're going to put up on Facebook, and we'll provide a link to that as soon as it gets up there.
Okay, so so let us know. Because
If not, just
we
email
can't
Valerie
Oh,
and she'll send it to you. Just email Valerie and she'll send it to you.
It'll
okay,
be in the minutes.
Keep it simple. Go directly to Valerie. She'll send you a list and then you're on the go.
Yeah, and
Right.
Ken will get it in the minutes, right, Ken?
Exactly, they'll be in the minutes.
Right. but the minutes don't come out until way past the time you want these things from us.
Yeah.
So-
No, I think
Really?
Ken's
Yeah,
gonna,
So
Usually
just
they come
email
out within a
Valerie and
couple of
ask her for it
days.
on Monday.
yeah, Ken gets them out pretty quickly.
Oh,
I'll send you a list, Sharon.
Okay, great, thanks,
Sorry,
Valerie.
You know, now that
Sasha?
he's in Nova Scotia, he may be more relaxed.
Yeah, right. Stasha, you have a question?
I did on, I think it was bullet number 3, the strengths, weaknesses, something and threat analysis, that station. When Sharon asked her question, I immediately went to that station as in terms of, we've had a lot of analysis done recently with conservation and, you know, in terms of flooding and different, you know, threats to the environmental threats, which kind of some of the climate change and the water tables rising and things like that immediately made me think of. So my question is just, if there's a place for some climate information within that particular station, and if not, just kind of more of an understanding of what that station is.
Hmm,
I think both of the above are important. You know, first of all, Valerie, if you can talk about your view of what that station is, and then Sharon, what you think would be appropriate, or not right now, but think about how you can address climate change with respect to that.
mhm.
So I'm trying to pull up my my prompts that I have for that station. So it was strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you're supposed to, when you do this kind of analysis, you're thinking of strengths and weaknesses as items that are more internal to Bolton, and it's a kind of an external opportunity or external threat. So the questions are along the lines of what are the strengths of the community? What does Bolton do well? What separates Bolton from other towns? What are Bolton's weaknesses? What does Bolton lack? What is Bolton limited by? What do we not do as well as other towns? Opportunities, what need is Bolton well suited to meet? What outside initiative can Bolton take advantage of? What are Bolton's threats? What might be an obstacle to our aspirations? What do you think Bolton's largest challenge will be in the next 15 years? And how can we meet this challenge to gain opportunity or lessen negative impacts? And that's just a start. So there's absolutely a way to include climate change, both in how the town is going to be impacted, but also you know, statewide resources, grants, opportunities. As I think Sharon had sent out the idea that, you know, we might be thinking about a green building code to comply a little bit more with the governor's climate change bill, right? So those are other opportunities related to climate change that we can start talking to participants about. So there's absolutely ways of including, I mean, really every topic in kind of one of those broader stations.
You.
But I think one of the things that will hopefully come out of all of this is elements of the implementation of the climate bill, make it happen in Bolton. And I think that's, you know, it's going to need a fair amount of advocacy, having read through that stuff that Sharon sent out, to make that happen. It's, yeah, it's a big deal. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of advocacy to make it happen, not just from government, but from residents as a whole. So good. Valerie, could you just, you know, to reiterate without getting into the presentation or the individual stations per se, just walk through your view of how the whole thing is going to come together? You know, the
whole, you mean
sequence.
the forum itself?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm imagining that essentially, so the forum's going to be held at the cafeteria in the Florence Sawyer School. We'll have the stations set up around the room. But initially we'll have everyone, sitting together looking at this presentation. The presentation is going to go over the work that you all have already done and what you're yet to do. Thinking about what a master plan is in general, why it's an important process. Moving a little bit more through again like what we already know. So the facts and figures that each group has kind of come up with and reported to us, to provide a sense of the depth and breadth of this process to someone who's never heard of a master plan process before. But this analysis also kind of sets the stage for these interactive stations that will really get people's feedback from. So trying to inform people as much as we can, as quickly as we can. So really just highlights from each topic in order to help people understand exactly what detail we're really looking for. And then we're going to, so the presentation is going to last about half an hour. And then we'll go into about an hour where people can spend as much or as little time at each station or at maybe one station that they like. So it's not going to be too, formalized or regimented. I recognize that some people will want to engage in a lot of discussion. And some people, yeah, I'm hearing a lot of that feedback too. Don't know who that is. I can mute all of you. There we go. Thanks, Brian. I feel powerful. So where was I? So people can spend as much or as little time as they want at these stations, because some people might want to have a dialogue with the facilitator or with other residents or friends that they see at the event. Some people might be a little bit more shy and just want to quickly do something and then kind of move on. But after we have about a full hour for people to mill around and interact and engage, we will come back together as a large group. I realize that some people might just leave, but we'll try to come back together and have a closing discussion. So we'll have some feedback from the facilitators at each of the stations, just giving us, a 1 minute, very brief overview of, the main themes that they heard or what most surprised them. And then there might be a little bit more of a moderated discussion around that station. And then we're going to quickly just move on to the next station because this part of the event will only take, we probably at this point will only have 15 or 20 minutes. So essentially, so people are going to leave hearing a little bit about what is currently going on in Bolton, what a master plan is. They're going to give their feedback. They're going to know how, who to contact in the future when they have questions about the process, how they continue to engage with the master plan process, and have a little bit of a sense of maybe what else was talked about around the room that they weren't a part of. Feel free to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, one thing that we did discuss earlier with a smaller group was some of the logistics associated with, one of which is we're going to go do again a re-review of the particular venue to make sure that we completely understand how it all needs to be put together. That's a critical element. We had talked about initially having food, decided that probably was not a great idea, particularly if, and Brian, you may want to comment on whether you've heard from the Board of Health with regard to a mask mandate. Okay, well, that's apparently in the cards.
Board of Health came out and suggested to, because we got it for the COA, that if you were inside a building, you wear a mask.
Okay,
It's a suggestion, it's not a requirement.
well, I think we ought to accommodate the suggestion to the best we can. And
Also, we
then,
talked about getting water bottles. We decided that we
Right.
weren't going to give them cookies, but we'd have water bottles.
okay,
Is there still the possibility that we could have a food truck?
A what?
A food truck or two?
I think that chance is, it's way late.
It's
now.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was just thinking you could get a plate of cookies on each table and, when people are sitting down, listening to you, that it's a snack, but nothing more than that. The other thing is, what I'm thinking about is everyone's milling around and everyone's talking. And someone at each station is writing down feedback from these people or somehow memorializing what they're saying. But it might be that we should be able to give everybody there a contact or an email or someone that they can either call or email with more questions or more thoughts as they've had time to sort of chew on some of these ideas. And that we might get more feedback that way also. So I don't know if you give them the committee and everybody's email or whether you pick 4 people, but I think if you handed them a piece of paper with a contact saying, as you go home and think about this more, feel free to contact us at this, so you get more feedback.
well, a couple of things with respect to that in logistics. Does it make sense to have people sign in and give their email address so we can contact them with respect to that? Secondly, I
Yeah.
spoken to Kia about putting together a flyer, a poster, whatever, announcing this that we had discussed vaguely in the last outreach and communication meeting. And maybe we need to provide as part of that contact information so that when people finish with this, having had something that they can take with them, they have at least contact information with which they can get back to us with
More
follow-up
thoughts.
thoughts, et cetera.
What
So
we
Kia-
had, what we had said, Kia, when I sent out the list for people to call, is that when you call them and talk to them, to get their email addresses, because then we can send them a reminder just before the date. We can just do a mass reminder. But, I think getting everybody's, when you're talking to them, you can get your email address right then and there. So hopefully we'll have those, Bob. We won't have to ask them when they come in, except for people who come in who haven't been called.
And there are going to be hopefully a lot of people, well,
Yeah,
I
hope
hope
so.
there are a number who are going to be there.
yeah,
that
just
were
come in. And for
contacted
those,
individually.
absolutely, because I think we should have name tags.
I think
Yeah.
we should have name tags, and I also think the best way to continually remind people is that they can contact any one of us
Right.
by going to the, town website. We're all listed there.
Or when you
But
say name
I don't think
tag,
our emails are listed there, are they?
No,
I don't
So I
think.
think, I think that we can have a contact of, on the slide, so it'll be in the presentation, but I also think that we can have, I was imagining that we would print out the agenda for the day, pass that out as people are coming in, they sign in, they grab an agenda, they do their name card. The agenda has our contact information. So I would assume it would be Bob, Brian's, and mine. And we could have a link to the website where people can, I believe they can fill in a comment and it'll come directly to our emails as well. I think that's
They may want to add
probably,
a few more people on because they may want to send it to people they know, and they may not know you and Brian and Bob.
yeah, I think that's, as dangerous as that may be. I think that is valid, that people like to talk to people they know.
They
Or
know.
people with whom they have had a conversation.
yeah.
I
Precisely.
think that in that case, let's just have them make that individual connection.
But
Does
we
that make
have to
sense?
give them that. So that's what I'm saying. We've got to give them the email address.
But hold on a second. If the idea is you're saying people are comfortable talking to people they know, then wouldn't they have their email address and
Not
contact?
necessarily, because it may be something people they don't know that well, but they know of them, so they feel comfortable contacting them. You know, people know you, Brian, because you're chairman of the advisory. They may not personally know you, you know, with your gray snout and all that hair you have on your head in your picture. I'm being snotty. But they may be comfortable because they've seen you on TV.
Okay, so you just want everybody's email address listed somewhere?
As lo- Or
Yeah.
people
I
who
think
feel
so.
comfortable doing it. If they're not comfortable doing it, we shouldn't put their names.
And I don't think it's dangerous if we put it on a flyer. If we put it out on a website, it's dangerous. Because it can be moved all over the place. But I think if we put it on a flyer, people who don't know, people who are individually involved and have never met before, but have had an engaging conversation may get back to them and provide additional input and thoughts on the subject. So I would suggest that in addition to an outline of the agenda for the day, that we put contact information with the
But
individual.
also, we
people.
should make sure everybody's comfortable with giving their email out.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone who
So-
isn't should let Valerie know.
So, well, let's turn that around. Valerie, if you can send out an email suggesting that's what we're going to do and make sure that people get back if they're not comfortable with that. Um,
Uh,
Okay,
Penny,
so Brian,
I just want to add in here to get back, no no plastic bottles of water, please.
Well, I don't know how we're gonna do water unless we do
Well-
individual
Well,
baskets.
Well, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Well, I mean, I would
Because-
recycle them.
I'd
It's
agree
not
with
that
you.
they were gonna be thrown away, Sharon. We're gonna recycle them.
Yeah, almost, but most of them, if you think you're recycling, don't actually recycle.
I have
Well,
a
if-
concern with that many people in a room that could be warm and no water.
well, I
So
think
if you all
we
can-
need
Aren't
to
there
take,
drinking fountains
Yeah.
in the lobby?
Huh?
Aren't there drinking fountains in the hallway or in the?
I don't
I think
know
there
if
are.
the drinking fountains are even working in it.
I was gonna say, some of them aren't working because frankly, when you're drinking, you're pulling your mask down and that leads to a whole nother
Yeah,
problem.
I'm not sure they're even open there.
okay, the simple
Yeah.
approach is to take the
Okay.
initiative. We give them water and we ask them to return the bottles, filled or otherwise. We'll take care of the recycling and we make a big deal out of
Yeah, there we go.
it, okay?
Yep.
So let's go with that.
So
So,
you do
Brian,
want
you just-
small bottles of water. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, we don't need big bottles.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Brian, do you want to, let's get back to your little chat that you just came out with, and talk about what you're
So
concerned.
yeah, just action items. So somebody can work with Valerie, maybe me and Kia on the printed flyers with the agenda with our contact information. Then I think we just need white blank name tag stickers that attendees can slap on and write their name.
Yeah.
But then I do
Those-
think it might be nice to have also like name tags for each of the members of the steering committee so people can approach us.
We'll have enough to go around. We'll let everybody who know who you are, Brian.
No, but I think pre-printed for Brian, you know, what you're talking about.
Or even just something as simple as if it's a sticker that has the master planning logo somewhere on it, we can write on our names, but like something that identifies us as somebody that can be talked to about it.
Right.
Now, that
Okay,
separates
so-
us out from the rest of the white beloy.
And it's not a big problem to make those and put our.
We'll figure it out. You have a good point.
Yeah, but, okay, but we'll
does-
figure it out. Why
so-
don't we figure it out right now?
Wow.
How
We'll
about,
get it done.
it does sound like a lot of the topics are kind of related to outreach and setting up the day itself. Would it be more helpful to kind of have a subgroup kind of meet to talk about
Well,
logistics?
yeah, absolutely. I was going to suggest an outreach meeting early next week so that we can go through a whole slew of things that we need
Yeah.
to talk about. I mean, the telephone contact, the email contact, the flyers that we're going to turn out, what we're going to do in terms of handing stuff out and contact information during, and the logistics associated with the forum itself. So why don't I set that up for next week and we'll hash out all of that stuff then. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Great. Okay. And that takes care of the next item. First public forum outreach. So we'll take care of that. Kia, if everybody's happy with what we've done so far on the agenda, can you possibly bring up your timeline in sharing?
I can also do it if Valerie enables screen sharing. Kia, you're muted. I don't know what you were saying. If you,
I was gonna say, give me a minute to find it, or, let's just see. Sorry, I didn't know.
I should have given you a forewarning on that.
Yeah, let's see.
I did make it an agenda item.
Okay,
That was snotty, sorry.
all right, I got it, up here. Oh, you got it up here.
Somebody got it up here.
Can you see it? No.
Yeah,
I think everyone can see that, right?
yes.
Yes. Yeah, I pulled it up at the same minute you pulled it up, so I didn't know if it was pulled up by you or me. It's you, because,
Okay, so what do
Okay.
you want? Go ahead.
Kia, do you want to walk through it very briefly and let's discuss two
yeah.
things. First of all, the individual activities and the duration of the overall process.
This was just for the slideshow, and it was basically taking a flow chart that Bob and Valerie had already done, and I just reformatted it and changed all the boxes to have verbs. So I don't know what you want. The dates are squirrely, nice and squirrely. I mean, I threw it out there. I don't know if we're gonna finish in early 2023, but I just threw it out there as part of the next steps for these forum people. So yeah, I don't have much to say about it other than that's just what I did.
Okay, I guess my reaction is it's great in terms of its vagary. No, in terms of public forums, we haven't made our decisions about it. I have some thoughts, but I'm sure other people do as well. We certainly need to get more into much more detail on where we're going in terms of aspirations and specific actions. And I think the deadlines, the overall timeline is, at this point, assuming things go reasonably well with COVID, is reasonable. And I very much like the graphic in terms of the color process of going from the cool start to the red hot finish, or at least deep orange. Other comments? I don't think anybody else is, well, few have seen this.
I think it looks good, Kia.
Yeah, I do too.
And the only other thing, I mean, for the forum people, we do want to say, we are in the middle here. I mean, maybe you point to it. This is the initial public outreach time. We've done Backyard Bolton. We've done, the Florence Our School cafeteria is the one we're doing now. Social media, we like to imply it's ongoing. But later, I do think at this forum, we should emphasize that we will be doing more public forums on some of the topics that come out. I mean, I know we had mentioned doing one about the town center as a topic, or it could be housing as the topic, or, I don't know how we're deciding all that, but, the ones that Stasha and I went to via Zoom for Dedham were very good. They took 3 topics in one night. So even though we haven't determined that, I think we should mention that to the public that, this is our initial forum and it's an ongoing process.
The only additional thing that has been discussed, and Valerie can discuss it in a little more detail, is we did have a fairly substantive EDC or Economic Development Task Force meeting, in which we talked about where we wanted to go with that. And part of that discussion was the potential for an additional, much more focused survey, without surveying out everybody in town. So there may be additional survey, and there also, although it's, you know, incorporated in your timeline, the potential for a forum specifically on that topic, economic development, which is a very broad one in terms of where it occurs, what gets done there, what the need is, what the desires of the town are, and what the implications to employment in the town are. Very, very broad discussion that we have to start getting our arms around and start quantifying and focusing on. But given that, and as I'm hearing it on first blush, nobody has a serious concern about the timeline that's presented, is that we will use that in the meeting.
Could I add one comment to
Sure.
that timeline?
Sure.
I think what struck me, because that was the first time I had seen it, was that it allows time for us to get the census data, which I really like.
Right. Yep. And that's apparently an evolving process.
I just have
Brian?
I have one comment, which is it's interesting to be going through a master planning process at the same time that the school committee is going through a fairly extensive high school building process. And I think that my personal view is, if we had to choose between waiting for some of those decisions to become finalized and then something we can incorporate into our master plan versus just finishing our master plan for the sake of finishing it, regardless of what's happening with the high school, I think we may want to consider extending it so that it at least incorporates the decision about the high school.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
so rather than change that, and that's pure speculation, I think, at this point, why don't we put a note on it that indicates exactly that? And I think we need to have conversations with the high school planning committee to see where that's going and start developing. I know, Brian, you've talked to them about projections on population and so forth, but I think it needs to be much broader than that.
I'm actually looking at Kia's, I think, quite frankly, gorgeous graphic of the timeline, and I'm going to suggest that the school building committee try to come up with something similar that they can share with the public, just to like give people a sense of when they expect these decisions to be made.
Yeah, we've had almost no information on that, at least nothing I've seen. So yeah, that's a great suggestion.
So will you give me the wording of, do you want like a bullet point to that effect, that we're going to incorporate something from them onto
Well,
the
proviso on
timeline?
it, but I think,
Or are you talking more like a footnote on this one?
well, a significant footnote.
Yeah, I think like a footnote or something.
Okay. All right, well,
You know, that puts it in a positive light, but points out that this is a very important element of our future town planning and tri-town planning, frankly. Okay, with that, Valerie, you want to talk a little bit about the Economic Development Task Force meeting and where we are and what you've discovered about our understanding of our current conditions, or not?
Sure, yes. So we did meet, I don't remember if it was this week or last week. The
Last
days are blurring. Last week, okay. So we had a good discussion of action steps and specific, like discrete goals that task group can accomplish. So the first task is going to be, I'm sorry, I'm hearing a little bit more feedback. I'm gonna try to mute a few of you again. All right, sorry, hope you don't mind that. So first of all is to update the master business list. So we do need to actually have an understanding of what businesses are in town, and whether they are home-based businesses or brick and mortars or more of a hobby on the side gig. Next, after we have that list, we'll be able to look at an assessment of all of the parcels in town that are business, limited business, industrial, or mixed use village overlay, and actually figure out who is where. So what businesses are located on what parcels? And then deeper than that, what the vacancy might be in each of those parcels, who the landowners are, what opportunities there might be for future capacity in terms of infrastructure. So what is the, do they have their own well? What size is their well? Do they have, what is their electric output or input? What utilities they have access to? Do they have parking? Do they want to be more public facing? Is it really just an office park? What's the potential to actually, and the purpose of this is to get a better understanding of, again, if the goal is to figure out how to right size the business districts, we need to know who is where and what is unused and where the potential may lie within the districts, within the parcels that are already zoned for business. So again, that's just the current zoned areas. So I don't imagine that we're going to be looking at parcels that might be pre-existing non-conforming that have a grandfathered use. This is simply just the currently zoned parcels that have a business in them. Part of this is to get a better relationship with the business community. So I want to know who those business owners are, who owns the land. If we can have a better relationship with the landowner themselves, we can start to talk to them about what their history has been as they try to lease space or work with developers or other owners, understand the duration of businesses within the building they might own, and really create that connection so that the next step would be, more of a survey of these individuals so that we actually have the connection and we can provide them, the landowners and business owners, with a survey that would ask them, more directly, what are the obstacles to business in Bolton? What might help you attract more businesses? Is there a specific bylaw in town that has been an obstacle? What change would you make? What do you want the town to be focused on? The goal of some of this as well, so this would be leading up to, so we're kind of setting the stage here to lead up to a business district assessment and market analysis that could be done by a community economic development professional who can provide that technical assistance. So we would either potentially receive a grant to have a consultant come in and do a technical analysis of what capacity Bolton might have for business, or we can think about the amount of money that might be and have a specific ask at the next town meeting, for example, to try to be able to integrate that analysis into the master plan.
So every year businesses get from, I think, the assessors, a notice on things like the equipment on site. And so that in a sense is even a profile. So you have a list. I even get one. I closed my business 2 years ago, but as a sole proprietor, I would get one and kind of gives you a scope of, some of the size of the business to some extent. So that list, the index, if you will, is there and would be, a great foundation to build on and expand from. And I think it's pretty comprehensive. I believe if you actually acquire, if you send in for a business license, I think that's what's behind then getting your excise tax form.
That's really helpful. Thank you. We had talked in this task group meeting of being able to use the list of folks who have applied for a business certificate,
Right.
But that is not comprehensive enough. So I figured we would have to be going to the assessors at some point. So
That's right.
So that's very helpful. All right, so I'll be talking to them. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
It's,
And the other
so
side of the equation that we talked about was, what does Bolton need? What does Bolton want in terms of business? You know, so between the two lies ultimately, hopefully, the solution to which we aim. And Valerie, you want to talk about the document that you distributed to the Economic Development Task Force that came out of Stowe 3 years ago? I thought that was very informative.
Sure, yes. So first of all, Bob's absolutely right. I did not mean to say that we would be only surveying businesses and landowners. You know, there would be a complementary aspect, which is, what do residents want? You know, what do we need in town? What do we want to see? What's the design, the look, the density, the location? All of that would be included. It's, you know, it's our job to try to find that balance. So it's the document that Bob is referring to, I believe, is now located on the Dropbox. It's under the Economic Development Task Group folder. It's called it's the Stowe Lower Village Business District Assessment Market Analysis. This is the document that I need in Bolton. So the process that I'm suggesting for the Economic Development Task Group to take on follows what was done ahead of Stowe being paired with a consultant to do the technical analysis. So making sure we know what businesses are where. In Stowe, what we did was focus on the Lower Village district, which is where it's basically that shopping center where Shaw's is, and all of those businesses along 117. Thank you so much, Brian. So this document is showing, you know, it's been a couple of years. I have to say, I don't know if I did refresh my memory right before our meeting the other week, but it's looking at where people in Bolton spend their money. So how far away do you go to get to a grocery store? How far do you go to get to a pharmacy? How far are you willing to go? Is that not an appropriate distance? Thinking about what the sales leakage is. So how much money is leaving our community that we could be capturing if we had the right business mix here, or if we had the right district, the right size district, or if our bylaws were such that maybe we allowed more within the current zoned parcels. So it provides a really strong case for any landowner who's looking to secure a lease agreement with the business. They can point, and so we did use it to try to get a restaurant going. Then COVID happened. We'll see what happens, but we were able to work very closely with a landowner and show them a visual preference survey of what residents appreciate about design of a business district and what businesses residents are looking to use in town, and work with this landowner to kind of create a plan for a small parcel within that district. So having this written down on paper, seeing where residents are spending their money, what kinds of businesses we want, is very powerful. It might seem kind of simple, but it's incredibly useful. Bob, I'm probably forgetting a few of the other critical elements of this plan. I don't know if you wanted to mention what was most interesting to you about it on first blush.
To me, it addressed both sides of the equation very nicely. What do we need? What do the residents of Bolton need? How far do they need to go to get it? Are they willing to go that far? Would they prefer to have it much closer? And what are the implications of having it much closer? But it gives you a tool ultimately for, frankly, creative commercial development, where you can sit down with commercial developers, landowners, et cetera, and help guide them in a public-private, I wouldn't say partnership, but collaborative relationship that meets the needs of both the community and the business community in the context of the community. We've talked about rural character and et cetera, and street view of commercial development. And the way to make that happen is certainly by design reviews and planning board action and various town regulations. But equally important is to be proactive and work with developers to guide them through that process and develop something that meets the needs of the community and them within appropriate limits. So, I think to start out with, you need the kind of data and the kind of insight that was provided in that Stowe study. And I urge everybody to take a look at it. It's a very, very nice statistical, learned perspective on both sides of the equation.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, and this is probably mostly for Valerie, but we should just keep an eye on whether potentially any of the American Rescue Plan federal funds that are going to be available for the next several years some of these things may potentially qualify under that program, especially for economic development. So we should just keep an eye whenever there's something like planning related that we might need money for. We should always, maybe you can reach out to Dawn or something and just check, hey, do you think this is a potential use of ARPA money?
That's a great point. I did recently hear from someone in town that there is a limit to the amount of ARPA money that you can use, and that has not been made very clear what the amount is and what all it can be used for. But that is a great point. There's
I think
ARPA
Dawn
money.
has a pretty
there's
good handle on that, though, don't you, Valerie?
on ARPA.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I don't have a good handle on ARPA.
But Dawn probably does.
Dawn does. I
No,
would
that's
defer
what
to-
I said. I think Dawn has a fairly good handle on
Dawn.
ARPA money.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said me. Like, no.
No, I think because we asked him about something and he said it wouldn't fly under ARPA.
Okay. So yeah, so I'll have to follow up with him. There's also, there are COVID specific grants that you can apply for, and certainly anything related to business development or business zoning would fall under that. So that's a good point, that there might be more opportunities.
But in the scheme of things, I don't think, based on what was paid for the consultants for the Stowe plan and the difference between the size and complexity of Stowe versus Bolton, that we're talking about a significant amount of money. And timing is critical. The sooner we get this baseline information, the better off we are to making intelligent decisions and even going out to the public with conversations, either now through the master plan or ultimately through the planning board. So sooner the better, if we can get money through something like that, as opposed to applying for grants, which is a great idea, but time is our future. Okay, that's basically what I had. And thanks, Valerie, for putting together that meeting. I thought it was very productive. We've made a lot of progress in a week after not getting much in 18 months, but we're doing fine.
Good.
Okay, anybody else have any other additional items that we need to discuss? My action is to pull together an outreach meeting next week early and get on with that. And one of the items that we discussed about the forum is making sure in the reasonably near term that we have the dramatis personae in place. Who's going to do what to whom where? We'll work on that. Okay, well, thank you very much. This is great.
What is the next meeting?
The next meeting is the fourth week of October, fourth Thursday.
You don't want to, so you don't want to have another meeting before the.
I don't know.
17th?
Well, let me just, that's a good point.
Point.
That's the only question I'm raising.
Good point.
Valerie, I mean, you're on point for this one. What do you think? Brian, what do you think?
I'll look at Brian.
I think it would be useful, but I'm not sure
well,
the whole team is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends. It really depends on whether the whole steering committee feels like they want to, or whether people are comfortable just letting the smaller working groups hash things out. Like if the steering committee wants to see and have a meeting where we discuss all the slides and stations, then we should schedule one before the 17th. But if not, then
Well, as a minimum, there should be an action item for everybody on the steering committee to look at the slides that are online.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And again, going back to roles and responsibilities, if we can put out a document in the fairly near future that provides the meeting agenda outline, as well as the slides and what's going to be presented at the individual stations and who is going to be involved and what their roles are, send that out to the steering committee and then wait for comments back, but do that, perish the thought, Valerie, fairly soon. And then determine whether there are things that need to be talked about in a, a larger group, in a plan.
Can I ask Kia, the flyer that you did? The flyer, oops, am I on mute?
Handout, yes, I have, I just was doing that right now. I just tweaked the town meeting handout to give you for your phone calling people.
That would be, I think if you just send a copy to everyone on the committee, they can copy it and send it to their phone calls.
Right, or you can just lift the phrases you like to
Yeah,
the.
That would be super. That would be
Yes,
bad.
I can do that. And then I was just gonna do a plain flyer that we're gonna stick up at the post office and,
Well, when you need someone to stick them up, I'll stick them up for you.
yeah.
Yeah, and if you can just send out a PDF of that, we can use it as is appropriate.
Yeah, I'd love a copy of that.
Yeah.
Just to know what is out there.
What, the talking point one?
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see it too.
Annie,
Let's
did
just
you
send
put
it to
out the one we
everybody.
put together some time back?
I put out the one without any edits, Mr. Romer. 0 edits. I threatened to edit Mr. Romer because I told him it was too businesslike. But anyhow, I put it out. And what basically was says is call everybody. And then the week before the forum, send out the flyer to remind everybody.
Okay, good. That's
And
the
Bob
first
was
time.
really good on, I gave him a list with no email addresses and he sent back the list to me with nearly everybody's email address so I could make a master list.
Good. Yeah, it would be nice to have a master list.
I mean, if you guys can do that, great. If you don't have time, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, but it'll be very useful, in
Yeah.
the next 18 months.
Yeah, it really will be. So,
And add to that, anybody who emails us or emails the central email address on the website with questions, comments, etc., and add them to the list so that we do have, a very broad list for communication. Okay.
Could I ask Valerie, could you tell us how much time each slide is going to be on the screen to give us a sense of how easy, so we can decide how easy it is to read them? Oh, unmet, yep.
All right, yep. So I think that we're sticking to the idea that the presentation will be a half an hour or under. Some slides will be very quick. Some others will be longer than a minute, but
So we're saying less than a minute or more than a minute?
yeah,
Average a
I'm
minute.
sorry. It's pretty, some will really just take, 20 seconds, but some might be a minute.
Yeah, I'm concerned about, complexity of imagery and people.
Yeah.
being able to understand what's there before it disappears.
The presentation group really cleaned up my slides, so
Yeah, we made them a lot simpler. And I
It's
think
a
we
lot simpler.
also were going to, weren't we going to have a printout of the slides or no?
We could if you want to,
If
but
somebody wanted it, if somebody,
I think that what we were going to do was have it online and then have the slides that were related to the interactive stations those would be printed out so that people could look at them. But I mean,
we'll
of
talk
course
about
we're
that.
trying to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's something that can very easily be put up on the town website.
Right.
And made generally available. Okay, if that's all, thank you very much. Do I hear a motion to complete this meeting?
So move.
Thank you. A second. And anybody who opposes, thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Good
night.
night.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much. Have a good night.